Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtottara Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtottara Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Page 615. Starting a new chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this first day of July 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Beginning chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures, page 615. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahangsa Satyam-akrodhas Tyaga-shanti-dapaishunam Tejakshama-tuti shaucham. Oh, did I? Dayam bhutesha loluptvam Mardavang rira-chapalam Tejakshama-tuti shaucham Adroho natimanita Pavanti sampadam daivim Abhijatasya bharata. Mukunda, chant 2 verses. Abhayam sattva sangshuddhir Jnana yoga vyavastitihi Dhanam tamascha yagyascha Svadhyayastapa arjavam Ahangsa satyam-akrodhas Tyagakshanti-dapaishunam Dayabhuteshvaro lupvam Mardavang rira-chapalam. Alex, do the last one. Tejakshama-dviti shaucham Adroho natimanita Pavanti sampadam daivim Abhijatasya bharata. All right, I'll read through the synonyms quickly. Sri Bhagavanuvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Abhayam, fearlessness, sattva sang shuddhi, purification of one's existence, jnana, in knowledge, yoga, of linking up, vyavastitihi, the situation, dhanam, charity, dhammaha, controlling the mind, cha, and yajnaha, performance of sacrifice, cha, and svadhyaya, study of Vedic literature, tapaha, austerity, arjavam, simplicity, ahimsa, nonviolence, satyam, truthfulness, akrodha, freedom from anger, tyaga, renunciation, shantihi, tranquility, apaishanam, aversion to fault-finding, daya, mercy, bhuteshu, towards all living entities, aloluptvam, freedom from greed, mardavam, gentleness, rihi, modesty, achapadam, determination, tejaha, vigor, achama, forgiveness, dritihi, fortitude, shaucham, cleanliness, adrohaha, freedom from envy, na, not, atimanita, expectation of honor, bhavanti, are sampadam, the qualities, daivim, the transcendental nature, abhijatasya, of one who is born of, bharata, O son of Bharat. Okay. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So we're not going to read this whole thing tonight. We'll get through a good portion of it. Purport. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter also, the devas or godly and the asuras, the ungodly or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation. And such activities are known as daivi prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In this 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as garbhadhana sanskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned, provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness, at least, should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so that they may become Krishna conscious after birth. This should be the advantage of children born of a father and mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The social institution known as Varnashram Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions of social life and 4 occupational divisions, or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. I think that was changed. Is that what you have? 4 divisions of spiritual life and 4 occupational divisions or castes is not meant to divide human society according to birth. Well, the beginning of the paragraph, the social institution known as Varnashram Dharma, that's the Varnas and the Ashrams. The institution dividing society into 4 divisions of social life. The social life, that's yeah, you've got repeat there, do the same. So that social is made into spiritual, or it's not, it should be. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he can get liberated from the material world. Now he's going to begin describing these qualities one by one. In the Varnashram institution, the sannyasi, or the person in the renounced order of life, is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders. A Brahmin is considered to be the spiritual master of the three other sections of a society, namely the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. But a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the Brahmins also. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness. Because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support, he has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me? He should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna as Paramatma will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, or fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. So we've covered one quality. Maybe one more paragraph. Then he has to purify his existence. There are so many rules and regulations to be followed in the renounced order of life. Most important of all, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to have any intimate relationship with a woman. He is even forbidden to talk with a woman in a secluded place. Lord Chaitanya was an ideal sannyasi, and when he was at Puri, his feminine devotees could not even come near to offer their respects. They were advised to bow down from a distant place. This is not a sign of hatred for women as a class, but it is a stricture imposed on the sannyasi not to have close connections with women. One has to follow the rules and regulations of a particular status of life in order to purify his existence. For a sannyasi, intimate relations with women and possession of wealth for sense gratification are strictly forbidden. The ideal sannyasi was Lord Chaitanya himself, and we can learn from his life that he was very strict in regards to women. Although he is considered to be the most liberal incarnation of Godhead, accepting the most fallen conditioned souls, he strictly followed the rules and regulations of the sannyas order of life in connection with association with women. One of his personal associates, namely Chota Haridas, was associated with Lord Chaitanya along with his other confidential personal associates, but somehow or other this Chota Haridas looked lustily on a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Lord Chaitanya said, for a sannyasi or anyone who is aspiring to get out of the clutches of material nature and trying to elevate himself to the spiritual nature and go back to Godhead, for him, looking toward material possessions and women for sense gratification, not even enjoying them but just looking toward them with such a propensity, is so condemned that he had better commit suicide before experiencing such illicit desires. So these are the processes for purification. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, the first thing we're going to hear is this list. And these are, I think, 28 qualities that are divine, that help one to come onto the platform of transcendence and stay there. And it's the qualities are divided according to the Varna and Ashram. And so it begins with the qualities of the sannyasi, as we've heard. So let's see what Prabhupada says here at the beginning. There's the Daivi Prakriti, Krishna, he describes here. Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness, and which are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation, are known as Daivi Prakriti, transcendental by nature. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is one of purification, reformation, attempting to mold our life in such a way that we can change the destiny, that we're going toward. It's like the most critical thing that we can do, and that any human being can do. But as we see, there's a whole bunch of ignorance out there. Nobody really knows how to act, what qualities to cultivate, what to avoid, in order to make their future the most auspicious and the best. There's so many plans. People have, social plans, military plans, financial plans, and every day, practically every other day, I get a notice in the mail. What is it? Double AARP. It used to stand for something. Do you know that? It was an acronym. Association of American Retired Persons. But then they expanded and they got, like, if you're 50, you can join. Well, you have to be retired. So the acronym doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just double AARP. It's known as that. They didn't want to change the acronym and so forth. But what are they trying to get me to buy? I belonged to that association for a few years, and then I just thought, there's no advantage. What am I getting from this? There were some discounts on car insurance, but then I found a really cheap car insurance that just pays by the mile, and since I hardly drive the car. Anyway, so what are they trying to sell me? They're trying to sell me a membership, and the big thing is life insurance. Now, it doesn't mean that you're insured against death. People think, oh, okay, no. It's that the people who you're attached to and who you're supporting will have some money if you die. So you're worth more dead than alive, basically. And obviously I'm not in the market for life insurance, right? But they still persist, sending me somehow. We got a real bargain now, on only so much per month, like that. So people plan, like, where are they going to be? They don't know where they're going to be as spirit souls, right? But somehow their loved ones will be taken care of. It's a scam. So and so many plans. This is the culmination of years. It seems like it never ends anymore. The political season in America. These. When I was a kid, the campaigns would be maybe half a year at most. Now it's like 2 years minimum where they start making money, trying to get. So what's it all about? It's all for trying to improve people's situation. Everyone's got some grievance, right? And so the thing is that the people convince you that they have a plan, they have the character, and we're tuned into what you want, and we'll help you in your life. You'll have more money, you'll have more security, you won't have to associate with those people anymore, whatever, So this is just an ocean of ignorance. People have no idea where they came from, what they're supposed to do, how they can really be happy. And so it's just, material life is just one frustration after another. And so, but the Bhagavad Gita here, Krishna is giving us actual knowledge, how, if we can develop these qualities, they will help us to be determined in Krishna consciousness and actually achieve the goal of life, to reach that state beyond all miseries, Vaikuntha, and back home, back to guided. So that's the Daivi Prakriti. And then, of course, there's also the Asura Prakriti, which we're going to hear about. Most of the chapter is about that. And then the last 4 verses of this chapter, I'm not going to give you coming attractions yet, but just a little hint. These are some of the most important verses in the whole Bhagavad Gita for those who are interested in practicing Krishna consciousness. Very important. So, how to be liberated? This is like a central theme in the Vedic culture, the Vedic wisdom, is that if you come to even the rudimentary knowledge, you understand that you're a spiritual being trapped in a material world, a material body, and that your real problem is this imprisonment, one birth after another, and according to how you act, you'll get, as Krishna says in the 13th chapter we read a few months ago, according to how you associate with these modes, you'll get a good or bad birth, more or less suffering. It's all suffering, but it'll be even more suffering if you act sinfully. So that mission of Vedic culture, not just the Vaishnavas, but the impersonalists, the Jains, anyone who understands to somehow or other end this round of birth and death. just having that understanding is quite a step forward from the vast mass of people who have no idea what's going on. But in order to effect that liberation, it requires that we change the character of our lives, that we cultivate these divine qualities, and that we eliminate the demonic qualities, which will become clear as we go on. So it begins with, because the varnashram system is designed for progression on the path out of the material world. These qualities are organized according to that. And it begins there with this fearlessness. So Prabhupada focuses on the word abhijatasya. And that is, how to cultivate good population. Because, the society can be hellish or it can be heavenly according to the people who inhabit it. I mean, I've been here for so long. I've been here for 31 years, the end of this month. And we never had this thing with the homeless people, I mean, occasionally there was one or two, but this is like a whole population of it. And it's here we're fortunate. You go to LA, they have 60,000 people in that city who are homeless. That's the latest count, What does that mean? It means that society is failing. It can't provide jobs for them. It certainly can't provide homes for them. They're just extra human beings, And can you imagine what that feels like? The wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness, when you actually take part full time, you have meaningful work to do. To sweep this floor is the best thing you do up to that point in your life. No matter what you did outside before. You feel that you're part of the team. You're recognized just by being sincere and doing the simplest little things. So that's so important in a society when the Prabhupada, again and again he makes that point, that the king, the head of society or government, their main responsibility first is protect the people. That's a big thing, and to see that everyone has useful work, according to their psychophysical nature, which is their varna, as what they've been born with. And these four principles are universal. There's an intellectual class. There's those who are natural leaders and fighters, and there's those who are good at making money, and there's those who like to work with their hands, most of the people. So when that's recognized and society is organized properly, and of course Krishna is in the center, then there can be peace in society. Not that it's just, who can I exploit, this idea of human resources. Realize what that phrase means. It means that human beings are like a resource, like oil or earth or something like that. Human beings are invaluable. That the whole point. And you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you'll see how the great kings were so concerned. That there was the rains came at the right time, and people were nourished. And Parikshit, when Kali entered in, he was very strict and ready to kill him. He was tormenting the earth in the form of the cow and Dharma in the form of the bull. So that's what real Aryan civilization is about, is that each member of the society is engaged with Krishna in the center, so they're satisfied. If there's enough Krishna consciousness, then everyone can be satisfied in their role, even the Shudras. Otherwise, everyone is dissatisfied. I mean, it's obscene that some guy he's making billions off of this, because everyone's at home, so they're shopping at home. I'm not going to mention his name. Everyone knows who he is. He's worth $174 billion. That's ridiculous. That's a horrible, yeah. And he's getting richer by the day. I mean, that's insane. So much money, and and he's not using it for people's benefit. It's just, the whole society is misguided. So this is a prescription here how these good qualities can prevail in society, and it all begins with getting a good population. Prabhupada mentions this Garbhadan Samskar, which means that the man and the woman are in transcendental consciousness when they have sex. And it's so fascinating to me that in English, you probably know this, that there's this idea of conceiving a child, that embedded in the language is like this thing of, the consciousness of the parents is going to be, they're going to attract a certain soul come into the womb there. That's far out, isn't it? That's one of the most interesting. There's a lot of interesting things like that. So let's just go through this first quality. So the sannyasis, I mean, in a modern society like we have today, there's absolutely no understanding of the importance of the sannyasa ashram and having someone who's an exemplar of renunciation and knowledge and self-control. It's just not part of the scene. But in the Vedic culture, sannyasi is an ideal. Is someone who can show by example, especially Vaishnava sannyasis, how one can live a life of renunciation and knowledge and be a vehicle, or as Prabhupada said, a medium, a medium through which real knowledge can come. And by example show how one can be happy and peaceful even without all of the material comforts and the usual material things that people covet so much. So Lord Chaitanya, he gave Lord Chaitanya's example, and the most important, the first quality is this abhayam. It's not an accident. Prabhupada's name was born. He was born with that name, Abhay Charan. Somehow his parents, saw that quality in him, or inspired. So that fearlessness, can only be there really when one is fully dependent on Krishna and feels support. I mean, obviously Prabhupada had that quality. To get on the boat, with no money, it's inconceivable. I mean, when we go anywhere, we make sure we have someone to pick us up. We know where we're going to stay. We have enough money to emergencies, and emergency phone up, And Prabhupada, he wasn't going just for 2 weeks and come back. He was just going. Just going. I mean, he had his free ticket back if he wanted it, but the point is that he was throwing himself on the mercy of Krishna. And that wonderful prayer that he wrote, Markane Bhagavad Dharma, he expresses that mood. So, well, you brought me here, but you must have some reason, and if you want to make me success you can. I'm completely dependent on you. And he showed, he got off the boat, he said, I didn't know where to go, left or right. Now, of course, someone had sent the traveler's aid. They have the traveler's aid to someone. So they told him what he would look like, and he was one of a kind, obviously, who he was. And he said, okay, get on the bus. He's on the bus. Middle of the night, he arrives, and there's his contact, takes him up to the house he's staying. So, I mean, and Prabhupada, those 12 years, they're full of instances like that. Prabhupada's in Mauritius, and he's driving on the road. Somebody, there's all kinds of tourists going, they're driving on the same side of the road, the right side, he's on the left. Boom, head-on collision. You read about that? But Prabhupada, did you read that? He kind of, before the crash came, he braced himself. He had some intuition, So he was injured, but very minorly. But so, to travel all over the world like that, obviously it takes fearlessness. And the Naxalites come. You heard about that one? Did you read the biography? The Naxalites? These are communist terrorists, Bengali communist terrorists. He's doing I think it was probably the first Calcutta Pandal. So they were very prominent that day. They would kidnap businessmen and extort money out of them, and sometimes murder. They're still around. So they threatened. They sent a message to Prabhupada. He has this pandal where he has thousands of people coming and stuff. Fly or die. This is their thing. Fly or die. In other words, get out, leave, or we're going to kill you. So Prabhupada didn't fly, and he didn't die. But so they came to the pandal. And so the first thing said, Prabhupada said, give them the seats. Make sure they have seats. So they're there, glaring, And Prabhupada started chanting the Brahma Samhita. Kind of disarmed them. Because all these guys grew up, basically in Vaishnava families, whatever, so they knew they had some sensitivity. And then, of course, he gave them prasadam, And most importantly, he explained how Krishna consciousness is spiritual communism. He gave them that whole thing, and they were very interested in that. So he survived by Krishna's inspiration, Another time there was another threat from Black Panthers in 1970 in Golden Gate Park. I think it was the first San Francisco, not the first San Francisco Rath Yatra, but the biggest one at that time, biggest festival in all of ISKCON. There's a wonderful video of it. So there was this threat, this is our territory, the Golden Gate Park, you can't have your parade there, So we had been, the temple was right near, I think adjoining the Hell's Angels. They're still around, right? Bikers, So they would make noise, and disturb it, but then we would always bring them prasadam, so gradually they became our friends. So they were our security. So there was a rumble. At the beginning of the thing, there was fighting the Hell's Angels, and we also had our guys. They had these big poles. I don't know if you know, in the Rath Yatra, some people, the Indians, they want to throw themselves under the wheel, to go back to guided. Do you know that? You've seen the Rath Yatra, right? So to protect against that, there's not that much danger in the West, but you can imagine in Puri, it's a big deal. So they had these long poles, and they started fending off. The fighters and the Hell's Angels were there. So Prabhupada was warned, don't come. So he said, no, we're going. So the driver, he took a circuitous route. So the procession was half over by the time Prabhupada arrived, And so this is wonderful video of him getting out, and they had provided him with this mauve silk thing, a suit, dhoti and everything. So there he is, and there's a kirtan gathered around, and he's dancing. He's dancing in front of Subhadra's cart. It's the most wonderful thing. But the point was, he wouldn't care about the threat, So Prabhupada personified this quality of abhayam. And then, but what for? For purification. That's another quality. Sattva sangshuddhi. Now, we're all meant to be, focused on purification of our existence. That's there in the first verse of the 5th canto, the Rishabde's famous verse, Nayam deho deha bhajang naloke kashtang kamanarate vidbhujange. O sons, and my dear sons, this human life is not meant for working hard for happiness that's available to the stool-eating hogs. Rather, perform divine austerity. Tapo divyam, putrika, by which what? Yena sattvam shuddhyed. By which your existence, sattvam, will become purified. Well, what's the good of that? Yasmat brahmasaukyam tunantam. And then you can be eligible to enjoy spiritual happiness, which doesn't end, is ever increasing, as opposed to this flickering material happiness, which just keeps you bound up in suffering. So sattva sangshuddhi is the next quality, which I think we read here. Prabhupada gives this whole explanation. The sannyasis have to be strict about any association with women. And then, so sattva sangshuddhi, abhayam sattva sangshuddhi, and jnana yoga vyavastiti. I think we didn't read that. Yeah, so we should go on there with that. And that's its question.
First part is that poem, or that Srila Prabhupada wrote when he arrived, or on the boat.
There's two. One
two.
When he was actually in the water coming across.
And were they both written in Bengali?
Yeah.
Okay. And so they're very nice, things for devotees to know about, that this whole feeling, and that it's very sweet to see. And I'm wondering, if they're written in Bengali, when were they translated? When did devotees know about that, his writings, those two pieces of writings?
That's a good question. The only one who was really in the movement who learned Bengali first was Achyutananda Swami. And he may have translated those. Prabhupada didn't translate them into English. But later on, Jai Sachinandan. See, I don't think either of them came out in the songbook. But the second songbook, Prabhupada wanted both of those in there, with the reprint of the songbook. Okay. The songbook first came out in 73, 74, and it was at the request of Achyutananda Swami, who was living in India, and he was exposed to all these songs. He was living with the Gaudiya Math, so he learned, he learned Bengali, and he learned music. He was a good musician, So Prabhupada agreed to that request, and so many of the songs that Prabhupada had been singing, and Yamuna became expert in, she would listen. He wrote down and translated. But his Bengali wasn't all that great, Prabhupada said, but that's what we had to work with. So, but I think Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma, may have first been translated by Jai Satyanandan for the second songbook, which came out in 78. He got permission from Prabhupada to do it, and in fact sent both of those songs to Prabhupada, and he sent back Markandeya Bhagavadama with some corrections. So we know that that the translation is good. The second one he promised to give his correction, but he never did because it was 77, and things got. So there are two different kinds of songs. The first one, there's a whole history to it. The first verse is a little ambiguous, and not quite sure what it means. But the last I think it was 2 years ago now, the years are just flying by, that at the encouragement of Bhakti Churu Swami, who's he's Bengali, so he knows, that the first verse was changed. Because it's saying, "Oh brothers, only when Radharani is happy with you will you be be able to progress in Krishna consciousness," something like that. But really, the Bengali is quite explicit, and what it says there is that, "Oh Krishna, when Radharani is pleased with you, then you'll be able to be happy." In other words, yeah, he's. And there's another verse where he says, "Oh, when I'm dreaming, when I'll be able to frolic with you in the forest." So this is support. Both of those verses are support for this idea, and a lot of devotees insist on it who were there at the time, that Prabhupada revealed that he was a coward boy, in the ultimate sense. But he didn't make it explicit, and so I said, "Oh boy, if I put that in there, I wanted to." People to know that it wasn't my idea to change it like this. So, but that he's on the boat. He's not preaching, and he doesn't even know if he's going to make it. He had 2 heart attacks. So he's writing something very kind of personal there. It's not about preaching; it's about his own inner experience and so forth. But after he landed and he took a walk, he saw Boston, and so he says, "Okay, looks like it's going to happen." So that's a whole different thing, the Markandeya Bhagavatam. And that's more famous, that's quoted.
Could I ask one other thing? It's speaking about a sannyasi purification, and a sannyasi must not associate with women, and then even what would now be considered very subtle ways. But then some of the same things are, it's not just a sannyasi, it's given for brahmacharyas, the 8 aspects of brahmacharya. And I was hoping maybe you could say something about, in the West, it's a little difficult, because if one follows the basic etiquette of a brahmachari, then you actually creep women out being a brahmachari. Because if you look, somebody was telling me that one sannyasi in India, who's been in India for 50 years, when he speaks with women, he just looks at their feet. Yeah. And people in India, they'll appreciate that, that's, it's very, sense controlled and everything, and they appreciate it's respectful. But if you were to do that now, that would just creep people out. And not making eye contact, and even body language. If sometimes even if your body language is anything, then that creeps people out. Wow, he must be really creepy or something. And he's why is there so much tension? Why is it? Yeah. So they think that you seem much more healthy and nice and not agitated if you just speak to them like you would another man or something. Yeah. So you don't want to hurt someone's feelings or creep them out or hurt so.
Well, it's a different world. When I joined, we had a whole bunch of women who were living in the temple. It's different than if you're just dealing with, what we say, karmi women, or even those who are interested, but they're not really 100% serious. So, when I was a brahmachari, it was okay, you can talk to the women, but you can do it, just for service and minimal, And that's the way it was. And a good portion of them were married. They had, their husbands. In other words, there was a whole contingent. We had some apartments outside. All the artists were there, and many of them were ladies, and so forth. And so and several of them were married. So it was well, it's not necessary. There's the women inside, and then there's the whole world of women outside, and the guests. But because there were all of these women who were living in the temple who were full-time devotees, they preached to the women, and it's not if the brahmacharis, and then they would immediately tell the lady guests why the brahmacharis are a little standoffish, so it would diffuse the situation, and they had someone to talk with, the friends, But now, we got our monks club here, so it'll tend to stay that way because women come and they feel uncomfortable, and then no one will talk to me and like that. So it's a different situation. It's a little artificial situation because, Prabhupada saw when he started that if he's going to make this movement work, then he's going to have to be, going to have ladies inside because the guys who are coming with their girlfriends. He says, okay, but you have to get married. So that was the thing, and then marriages took place, and it went on like that. So now it's a little more awkward because you have situations where the women come and, well, what do I do? There's no ladies here to talk to, So it tends to stay that way. But the basic principle is minimize it for service, for preaching, and not in a secluded place. That's the big thing, And do the best we can.
Sorry, the last thing I'll say. There was another sannyasi was saying that, I think he was saying even in India, it's really difficult because you never know how a person was raised and like what they're expecting from a sannyasi. So he says, if I just, am basically respectful and don't make eye contact and, smile, then some people are like, what's with the sannyasi? He thinks I'm like trash or something. He thinks I'm like, lowly. He won't even like look at me and smile. Mm. And then so he says, so I'll smile. But then if you smile at the wrong person who like expects that a sannyasi won't look at you, they're like, what's with the sannyasi smiling at me? So he said it's very difficult to not, when
you have a mixed culture
to
like
encourage
that,
people.
Yeah, that's one of the things, about this whole program Prabhupada gave, okay, when you get married, fine. You get married by 25 and then you only got 25 years, when you get to be 50, then you start your Vanaprastha program, and of course as soon as you get married, you have a child who's a male, and then by the time you're ready to take Vanaprastha, he's 25, so he can take care of your wife, and you gradually, then you take sannyas, and she goes home, and where do you have that nowadays? Even if you happen to have a son who is the right age, he doesn't want to hang around. He wants to go, thousands of miles away or whatever, There's no support system for the classic varnashram system. It's very difficult to establish. All right, let's read one or two more paragraphs, maybe. So, middle of page 618. Next item is Jnana Yoga Vivastiti, being engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. Sannyasi life is meant for distributing knowledge to the householders and others who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement. A sannyasi is supposed to beg from door to door for his livelihood, but this does not mean that he is a beggar. Humility is also one of the qualifications of a transcendentally situated person, and that of sheer humility, the sannyasi goes from door to door, not exactly for the purpose of begging, but to see the householders and awaken them to Krishna consciousness. This is the duty of a sannyasi. If he is actually advanced and so ordered by his spiritual master, he should preach Krishna consciousness with logic and understanding. And if one is not so advanced, he should not accept the renounced order of life. But even if one has accepted the renounced order of life without sufficient knowledge, he should engage himself fully in hearing from a bona fide spiritual master to cultivate knowledge. A sannyasi or one in the renounced order of life must be situated in fearlessness, sattva sangshuddhi, purity, and jnana yoga, knowledge. So sannyas is a big challenge, but it's also a glorious position because then you can basically spend full time preaching, which is, the real nectar of Krishna consciousness. The next item is charity. Charity is meant for the householders. The householders should earn a livelihood by an honorable means and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thus, a householder should give in charity to institutional societies that are engaged in that way. Charity should be given to the right receiver. There are different kinds of charity, as will be explained later on. Charity in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended because it is simply a waste of money. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Then, as far as Dhamma, self-control, is concerned, it is not only meant for other orders of religious society, but is also especially meant for the householder. Although he has a wife, a householder should not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders, even in sex life. which should only be engaged in for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods, or more abominable methods, to avoid the responsibility of children. This is not in the transcendental quality, but is demoniac. If anyone, even if he is a householder, wants to make progress in spiritual life, he must control his sex life and should not beget a child without the purpose of serving Krishna. If he is able to beget children who will be in Krishna consciousness, one can produce hundreds of children. But without this capacity, one should not indulge only for sense pleasure. So there's a whole subject which I'm not prepared to discuss of the Grihastha ashram. But it's much harder to be a good Grihastha when the whole society is demoniac. You know, if you're again, the support. It's traditionally family, you know, it means you have the extended family, you know, that also lives with you. Just like you see, you know, Prabhupada's pictures, you know, he has his sister there and so many others, you know, and they support each other. So, I mean, it's not a given. It's of course an austerity, but you'll find support. And the wife, you know, Prabhupada talks about, you know, this child marriage. He was married, you know, his wife was like 11 or something, you know. But there's no contact. The point is that they know that there's someone there. You know what I mean? In other words, the attachment grows up, and then he said, and there's no divorce. One of the things that you don't worry about is if there's some fight going on between a man and a wife. You know that it's going to be solved and that they'll stay together because there's no divorce. Of course, now in India, even so, that's predicated on the man being virtuous. If he's a rascal, then he'll take advantage of the situation and beat her up, and you know, take advantage because he knows there's no divorce, you know, and it can be hellish. So this is why, you know, without the proper culture of knowledge and austerity and you know, good population without Varnasankara, then the whole thing breaks down, because it's based on you know, wanting to follow the real Dharma. This is why the book begins with Arjun's, you know, really concerned, am I following Dharma? I'm bewildered about my Dharma, you know, and therefore I'm troubled and paralyzed. So to solve that problem, he approaches Krishna as a student, as a disciple, not, you know, so Krishna will give the absolute truth on there. And so this is all part of Dharma. It's called Varnashram Dharma. There are rules and regulations, Manusamhita, tradition, you know, society, and therefore there's peer pressure to follow the proper things. So now, you know, we're kind of flying blind here. We're just a little group. But because of the power of the holy name and the process of Krishna consciousness, even coming from no training or bad training, if you're sincere, you can get the spiritual strength to follow and become purified. That's the power of the holy name and the whole process of devotion centered on it. Okay, so let's see, one more. Sacrifice. That's the next one. Yajna. Sacrifice is another item to be performed by the householders, because sacrifices require a large amount of money. Those in other orders of life, namely brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas, have no money. They live by begging, so performance of different types of sacrifices is meant for the householders. They should perform Agnihotra sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature, but such sacrifices at the present moment are very expensive, and it is not possible for any householder to perform them. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtan Yajna. The Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of Harekrishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So these three items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. So whenever sacrifice comes up, Prabhupada focuses on this. You know, it's such a blessing. We don't realize. You know, do you imagine? Okay, we got to do an Ashrameta sacrifice. First of all, the whole idea of like killing a horse, you know, it's like, really? That's yeah. But because, you know, okay, with great restriction, with proper Brahmins and the sacrifice, the time, you know, and then it's auspicious and the horse gets a new life, whatever, you know. But it's just impossible. I mean, no one will, you know, even think of doing it. Now, sacrifice in the broadest sense, people have been doing it all the time. but they're not doing it under regulation. There's no mantras. It's not for purification. It just keeps them bound up. But this Sankirtan Yajna, which was the blessing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what are you sacrificing? Well, the time, some physical energy, but mostly it's possible only when you have faith. You know that song where Nityananda's opening the marketplace of the holy name? And what's the price? Your faith. If you don't have faith in it, the whole thing, you won't do it. So I can do something else with my time. I can have fun, or I can make money, or do something. But if you have faith, and Prabhupada implanted that faith, and he created this whole atmosphere. That whole famous video where he's out in the park beating the drum, and he's the center because he's so serious about it. 3 hours, and he had his little group there, and the sound has got the beat. Then it's another thing for people to check out, and then before long he has this big group there, and then these other musicians come, So he created it, by his determination and by his faith in the holy name, If you would come to the park and then check it out, it's just, God, there's nobody here, who's going to chant? This is he would have never come to America, that's his God brothers couldn't imagine it, But so that jug is taking place. It doesn't require any purity. There's no cost of admission, except one thing: your interest, your preliminary faith, shraddha. So and as soon as you do take part, you chant and you hear pure chanting, Prabhupada's chanting, the purification is taking place, leaps and bounds. Especially if you take part, So that's how it's worked, and this Sankirtan Yajna is going on. I bring these magazines, So the next, I think tomorrow's magazine, it's all about Africa, about chanting in Africa. And it's you see people who, were by birth, by culture, they're completely unqualified, even as we were in their own way. But there they are, kids and older, people of that race, it's auspicious life. They're being cleansed. They're purified. Did you get that picture? I don't know if you get. Did you see it? There's Badrinath, I might send it out. It was sent out. The Krishna kids are the answer. It was. Yes, Krishna kids that play lead the way. So it's a beautiful picture, especially that one boy in the middle. It's amazing. So it's 2 black kids and 2 white kids. And one white boy and one, they're like 4 or 5 years old, but it's this delightful thing. They're like all over each other, And the little black kid is looking at the camera, and it's such a blissful, he's got a half smile, and he's looking right at you, and he's basically saying, "What's your problem? You got to get off of this bodily platform." But it's it's such a inspiring thing, but it's true of the adults also. You see, is that the bodily concept is such ignorance. It's the first lesson in Krishna consciousness. And if you really chant, and then you serve with each other, you chant with each other, you take prasadam with each other, you serve with each other. It's not there. The whole bodily thing isn't there. When you go to Mayapur, and hopefully you get to go after this virus is out, finished, especially at Gaurapanim time, it's like, wow, this is the real United Nations. There's the Chinese people over there, and there's a lot of Russians, way more than the Americans. It used to be all Americans, the first few years, and then it's much more expensive to go for America. Anyway, it's just, wow, this is really the movement. You can see how there's no barriers. There's no, cultural barriers or geographical or racial barriers. And so, Prabhupada, it's a success. But for each of us has the challenge of, staying on the path, staying pure, trying to cultivate these qualities that Krishna is giving here. And we have our own list of 26 qualities of a devotee. So it's good to, hear them and realize, this shaucham, I have to be cleaner. I should clean my bunk more than once a week or once a month, whatever. So that's why they give these lists. And then comes the real hair-raising part of the chapter, describing the demonic qualities. When I first read this chapter, I wasn't a devotee. I read it in some other Gita, I think a Penguin Gita, but they give the translations. I said, wow, that's me. I've got that quality. Expert at insulting others, yeah, that's me. Let's check that one off. So, this Hare Krishna. All right, so all glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.